Hi, Lee Phillips again. I want to talk to you a minute about feeding tubes. Christy decided she was going to leave town like and die, and so I don't actually have a feeding tube to show you anymore. But it's a tube, it's a port, comes out just above the navel, it's inserted surgically, and basically it's a tube, rubber tube that goes down into the stomach, and it has like a big washer on the inside so it doesn't pull back out, and then it has a clip on the front, and you can actually move the clip up and down as the person gets fatter or skinnier. You can adjust the T that holds it against the stomach. You need to care for the feeding tube though, and what we would do is we would give Christy a shower. She liked the shower in the tub with the tub buddy, and then we would get her out and shower and then dry her, and then I'd just lift the feeding tube just a little bit and dab under the T that held it down and get all of the moisture and all of the mucus or the leftover salve out from under that, and clean it up good with just a regular old Q-tip. Then they wanted us to put on a barrier moisture cream. She didn't do well with this. It didn't work for her. In fact, they didn't teach us how to use it at all, basically, to begin with. So we had to figure this out as we went along. And they said, oh, well, you should be using barrier cream. It was always red and sore. And you don't pull the feeding tube. Whenever you're feeding her or putting anything down the feeding tube, make sure that there's slack. Because if you pull the feeding tube, that really makes it hurt. And it hurts for a long time. I mean, days. So we would dry her off, clean it all out with the Q-tip, and then would actually put the triple antibiotic ointment, the Neosporin. We usually use Neosporin. This is a Walmart variety, same ingredients, third the price. So we went to this, but would just put a squirt around it so that we were sure that it was all covered as it went down into the stomach with the Neosporin. And we kept Christy's feeding tube for what, 4 years? Whenever they get to the point where they can't swallow well, and you do this before that point, you put in the feeding tube. Christy cried for days after the feeding tube because she thought that it disfigured her so badly. It's under the clothes so nobody sees it, and you put the end of the feeding tube, would put it up under her bra. We've been curious as to what you do if it's a guy and you don't wear a bra, but we'd put the feeding tube up under the bra and it would hold it there all day. And you're going to have to tell me, you guys that are doing this with a male patient, what do you do with the feeding tube? So remember to send me your own contributions as to the tips of how you take care of an ALS patient, or even just a paralyzed patient, somebody on a feeding tube. Give us the tips. We couldn't clean the feeding tube. It got so it looked pretty grody. Once a week we would take the end off, would take the end of the feeding tube off, and we had Y-ports. Come on, Y-port. Well, I guess I can just tear open the plastic. That'd be better. It's going to be not cooperative, I can tell. So we'd get the feeding tube and would pull a port out of the end. You have to make sure you don't pull the feeding tube itself, but then would put on, this is called a Y-port, and I wish it didn't have the Y because we never used this. And we would grab the feeding tube, pull the old one out, and then insert the new one. While the port was out, we would use a little brush, and they'll give you a little brush, and you brush it down back and forth, into the feeding tube, but you can only go as far down as the stop or the clip. This is the clip. It goes on the feeding tube, and you're going to put a new one on each week or every other week or whenever you need to. And it goes down, that you pull the old one off, hold it down below so you don't pull it out of the stomach, then pull the clip out, then feed a new clip in, and it just clips down and clips the feeding tube off so that stomach fluid doesn't come back out the feeding tube. We would, when we gave Christy a bath and before we'd feed her, would let air out of the feeding tube, and that released the air gas that was in the stomach, and it would bubble a fair amount actually. So we'd unclip it and hold it on her unclipped, and then the gas would come out. But you'd clip it back down. When we cleaned the tube though, we could only get as far down as the clip. And the tube got really stained. They normally would replace the tube every year or 18 months, but with an ALS patient they get bad enough breathing wise that they can't put them under an anesthetic anymore, and it's a procedure that requires a general anesthetic. So they can't put them to sleep anymore because they can't breathe, and so we just had to deal with the feeding tube. I tried to put Coke in it once, and Coca-Cola, you know, they claim that you can put Coke in the toilet and it cleans it and all that stuff. I put Coke in it and it didn't do anything. If any of you know how to keep the stain out of the feeding tube, let me know. That'd be a great one. And by the way, subscribe. We keep putting up new ones of these all the time. So, anything else, Abby, on taking care of the feeding tube? The gauze. Yes, I forgot the gauze. Once we were through with the Q-tip, drying it out and cleaning it up, then we would put the antibiotic on it underneath the little clip, the little tie down on the front, and then you slide a piece of gauze up under it, down under it, so that it doesn't rub against the skin. And our gauzes come in a package of 2. We'd use one packet one day and one the next day, and then that would stay on underneath the clippy thing that holds it into against the stomach, and make it so that it didn't rub or irritate the skin. And forgot the gauze. Anything else I forgot? Okay. I think that's the care of a feeding tube. We're going to do the feeding of a feeding tube in another YouTube.